Welcome to Widowed Too Soon, where real-life widows and widowers come together to share their stories of survival, faith, and the journey of finding hope in the darkest of times. Whether you're newly widowed or have been on this journey for some time, each week we're here to provide you with inspiration, practical advice, and the reassurance that you are not alone. You were made to not only survive, but thrive. And now here's your host, a woman who has walked this path herself, who finds solace in writing, joy in speaking, and freedom in dancing like nobody's watching. Michelle Bader Ebersole.
Hello and welcome to Widowed Too Soon. This is Michelle Bader Ebersole. We are here for part 2 of Making Purpose from My Pain. As you can see if you're watching, I've got a Christmas tree up here. We got Christmas lights. We got our whole house decorated the other day. And I'm excited to get into this episode today, but just thought I'd share a few things first. We got our tree a couple days ago. So if you're new to the podcast, I used to do this every single time. I would kind of like give a recap of what's been going on. But since I don't do that very often, I just thought I would do it today. So love Christmas time, but yes, it can be very difficult when you are grieving. I'm now in a better space where it doesn't bring me the grief like it used to. But if you are having grief, please go back and listen a few episodes ago to Surviving the Holidays. I believe that's what we called it with Rob Linger. That was a great episode. If you go way back, we have some other episodes about grief too, and you can talk about those. Friday night, Joel and I got all dressed up, which was super fun and got all fancy. And we went to a gala. Is it called gala or gala? I thought it was gala, and people there were saying gala. Doesn't matter, potato. But we had a fabulous night. It was like an auction, like a silent auction, and then they had a live auction. Everything was way out of our price range. But Joel's like, we got to bid just once. So I can't even remember it was for a vacation or like a hotel night or something. So we bid on the first bid, but we got way outbid. But it was really fun just to get dressed up and go out and all of that stuff. And then we hung out with friends afterwards, had a great time. And then on Saturday, we went and got our Christmas tree. And that's always one of my favorite things. It doesn't bring me grief like it used to. It was really hard the first year because, Luke actually proposed to me. I think I shared this on the last episode that he proposed to me while we were decorating the tree. So, I did tell the story again this year. I'm like, do you guys remember the story about the snowman where Luke put my ring and the kids were like, oh, no, we don't know. I'm like, you don't? And they're like, just kidding. We know. But I told them again anyways. And we had a great time going out and getting the tree. It was like the one day that wasn't raining. It's beautiful. And it was on sale for $30 for a Douglas fir, which normally pay like $80. So great deal. Anyways, had a great weekend and I was so exhausted. I haven't even listened back to my episode, but I know it was really emotional. And like I said last time, I'm finding that when I do these podcast episodes on my own, it is so deep and so emotional. And so I know that's kind of the pivot that God's having me take right now with this podcast is I've got the interviews, which I absolutely love, but sometimes I think I'm supposed to be on my own and go really deep and really emotional. So here I am for part 2. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback about part 1. Our Facebook page, as you know, the one called Widow Too Soon community is absolutely exploding. We are now at 6,000, over 6,000 people. I think last week when I did this, we were like at 5,000 or 5,000 something. And with that is good and bad. The good is so many more people are there that we can encourage. And I like to look at it as a group effort because I'm only one person. But if you're on that page, could you please spread some positivity, like an inspiring quote or something that spoke to you or whatever. It's really hard to keep it in a positive place. And then there's been some comments that have really like hurt my feelings. And I have thankfully great admins who are helping me through everything. I now have 3 admins, so there's 4 of us, and they've been wonderful. Shout out to Karen Kendall, Karen Latham, and Cindy Sell. Totally appreciate you guys so much. I've been doing fabulous interviews. I have 2 more in the queue right now to go out in the next few weeks. I've got another one I'm doing, I think 2 more this coming week. Like I have more than I can publish. And so it's really exciting. But today I'm really excited to share with you how I came to where I am today. So we left off right after Luke had died. I just went back and listened to, okay, where did I leave off? So we left off at part one. If you haven't listened to it, please go back in part one so you can hear the full story, not just where I am today, but where I was when Luke died. So I'm going to start with where I was the first few months after Luke died. So, as you remember, I talked about crying on the floor and being so desperate. And that is definitely where I was a lot. I remember just absolute desperation of, I don't think I can get out of bed. I don't think I can survive this day. I just want to die. Not that I was suicidal, but I was in a place that I just was like, what's the point? I remember thinking, what's the point? But I had my kids, which was definitely helpful. My mom was there constantly making sure I ate and took care of me. My best friend, the day Luke died, shout out to Deborah Johnston. She drove out from Idaho and got there. Like, I called her. She was my first call, like after, my family and everything. She drove out. She took care of me. I don't even remember exactly like what happened, but she was there for me. And there were tons of friends. I had a whole group of friends. They were there for me. And it was just I had a great support system. Anyways, I was completely in a bad place, but I remember the first time I had joy. Now, do you remember the first time you had joy after your spouse died? This is like the one that sticks out. I mean, I'm sure I smiled before then, but about a month after Luke died, I was like, we're going to go on a trip. So I packed up the kids. We drove to Eastern Washington, to Ellensburg, Kittitas area, if you know where that is. And went to see aunts and uncles and cousins, and just I have a ton of people out there. And it's in the country. And I remember milking a cow. Okay, so for me, this is my grief moment. My first joy moment after grief. I'm milking a cow. I'm laughing. And there's this picture of me. Look, oh my gosh. If you're watching me, I'm like actually doing the milking motions, which is really interesting. So I'm milking the cow and I'm laughing. And I'm like, whoa, like, am I laughing? Is it okay? Is it okay to laugh? Do I feel guilt because my husband died and I'm laughing? What's wrong with me? I know you've been through this because I work with enough widows to know that this is an actual problem. So that this is an actual thing that people go through. And then I remember like I posted pictures of me milking the cow and all this stuff. And I was staying with one of my aunts, and I remember she said, I saw your post and it felt good. It was so good to see your joy back. It was so good to see you smiling. And that was a huge moment for me. Like, okay, this is okay. It's okay. And so I want to give you permission right now. If you're in that brand new baby widow phase and you're like, I feel guilty. Like, I feel guilty laughing and smiling and having a good time. You are free. God has freed you, and your loved one would want you to be living life, having fun, getting your joy back. And so I remember that moment very specifically, and I want you to know that it's okay. So how did I recover from grief? And yes, I do believe you can recover. We will always miss them, but you can recover. So I dove into every single grief resource I could put my hands on. So it was COVID, so that was a little different. Remember, he died in May 2020. And so the in-person groups were no longer, there was like not much I could go to. I was able to still see my counselor. I've been with her like 15 years. And so that was awesome to continue to see her. I found it was kind of like grief group counseling online. I did that for 8 months, once a week. We had some great activities with that. I found a grief retreat, which was very, very difficult to do during COVID, but I found it. And I went to that. That was very, 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 very healing. You've already heard me share some of the things that God revealed to me at that retreat. And it was my full-time job, besides being a mom, was to recover from grief. I wanted to as quickly as possible. And I learned so much. So this is going to floor some of you. Now, regular podcast listeners, you've heard this for years. But if you are new and you have not heard this before, get ready to hear something you maybe have never heard before. Here it is. There are no stages in grief. Let me say it again. There are no stages in grief. Okay, so Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote lots of books, one of them is called On Death and Dying, and lots of books. She created these stages for the people dying, not for those grieving. And somehow, like the game of telephone, it got confused over the years, and people thought and still think there's stages. I remember thinking, what's wrong with me? I didn't go through this stage or that stage. Do you know how much relief it brought to me? And I hope it's doing the same for you. When I learned that there's no stages, I was like, oh, I'm okay. There are waves of grief, definitely. They're like tsunamis sometimes, or little just tiny baby waves. It just depends. You can be like totally fine in something, a smell, um, a picture, so many things can totally set you off. I mean, that happens to me, still happens to me, but usually they're baby waves now. They used to be tidal waves and I'd have to go lay down. That might be where some of you are. But just know that there's nothing wrong with you if you haven't gone through all these alleged stages, that there's not. Oh, here's another fun fact. I learned this recently, that when Dr. Kubler-Ross was dying, she said, I don't even know if these stages are right because I haven't gone through them. So there's that. All right. So I dove into every resource I could get. And at about 2 years, we'll go ahead and then we'll come back. About 2 years, I thought I'd done every single bit of grief work that I could. And I had someone ask me, have you heard of grief recovery? At that point, like many of you probably hadn't. And I looked into becoming an instructor for grief recovery, a grief recovery specialist. And I learned that I had so much more grief that needed my attention, so much more to work through. In grief recovery, what we actually do is we graph out our entire life, every loss we've ever had. Now, talk about powerful when you see your entire life on a graph, like all the losses. So first we do that. So I did that and was like, okay, that's a lot. Second thing we do is identify the biggest loss. So of course, for me, it was the loss of Luke. And then I took that relationship and we did a graph with all the positive and the negative. And so often when we are widowed, we do not want to remember the bad things. We only remember the good, but they're facts. Like my counselor said to me, facts are facts, so there are things, no marriage is perfect, that I still needed to work through that I did not realize until I did grief recovery. And then from there, we write a letter to the person. And there's something so relieving about saying in person to somebody who's trusted, like reading the letter out loud. And most people, after they take grief recovery with me, I've taken over 40 people through it, tell me they feel such a sense of relief. Because we say that grief is like, you've got this backpack, right? And every time you have a loss, it starts out little. It could be things in your childhood. A cat dies, you move away, parents divorce, whatever. And it's like putting rocks in this backpack. And one day you get a boulder, a big fat boulder put in your backpack. And that is the boulder of the death of a spouse. And you can't move. And so in grief recovery, we unpack those things. So this is just a little side note. So that's what helped me a lot. And I am currently taking new clients. And if you are interested, please shoot me a message, michelle@widowgoals.org, or on Facebook, anywhere if you want to learn more. And I do have scholarships available for widows. Now back to our regular scheduled story. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, so those are some of the things that majorly helped me. And then what's kind of the progression of how I started a ministry? Like, why did I start it? All of those things. So the very first thing I did, as far as I can recall, I think the first thing I did was start my book. So I've always been a writer. I have a book, if you want to look it up, called Cancer Can't Crush Us. Or maybe you know what? I'm going to put the links in the show notes just in case you're curious. And it's my whole story with Luke. I wrote it the year after he died, year after he was diagnosed. And it's about my life with him and how most people have all these crazy, they say the first year of marriage is hard. And we're like, what do they have to complain about? Like, we went through cancer, amputation, baby born, like what? Anyways, I have loved writing since I was a kid. And I published a couple other books. And someone told me about this thing called the Book Proposal Boot Camp. And it was by Proverbs 31 Ministries, and that you could enter to be one of these people who could take the boot camp and get all this professional training with Lisa Chakirst and all this stuff. So I did. And I was like, I don't know, I was one of, like, there was like 800 and some applicants, and I was one of them. And they chose, I think, 110 or something like that. And I was one who got in. And that was really exciting. And so that excerpt you heard last week when I read about my daughter, the day after Luke died, that's part of what I wrote. So I wrote an entire outline of 30 goals, like get out of the bed is the first one, call on your tribe, have a bunch of different outlines. And so I outlined that book. I went through this whole program and I loved it. And it was like, I don't know, 4 months after Luke died. And it really helped me to process things. And that book is still in the works. I am still in the process of creating it. I do have some possible prospects, or I will self-publish it. It will probably be out, I would say, somewhere in 2025. My goal is to have it published. Don't worry, you'll know about it because I know you guys will want to read it. Anyways, okay, so that's the first thing I did. The second thing, or it could have been simultaneously with doing that, is I started doing TikTok videos. Okay. So actually somebody told me, they're like, if you want to really get your widow stuff out there, you should do TikTok videos. I think maybe I'd done a few Instagram reels. I think I'd created Widow Goals, my Instagram page, and I think that was before that. And I would just put like inspiring quotes and stuff like that. I was like, I just want to help people. Because my whole thought was like, if I had to go through this, I want to help people. So I started creating super silly TikToks. Like I look back and I'm like, oh my word. And they're still there if you want to go look at them. My handle is Widow Goals. Actually, there's a link in every podcast too. You can go see me on TikTok. And I just started doing videos like what to say to a widow, what not to say to a widow. Here are some widow goals, get out of bed. And it was just, I just wanted to help people. And it grew very, 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 very quickly, like overnight. And I was like, whoa, what the heck happened? And sometimes I would post videos of Luke and things that he did, like what I told you on the podcast before about the ring. I did a video about that. Oh, which I linked that. If you haven't seen it, you can go back to the last podcast and see it. And just started like, okay, I like this. I like that there is purpose from my pain. I hate what I've been through. I never wish it on anybody. But if God allowed it, I can accept it and I'm going to do something with this. Like I'd done all kinds of things in my life. So my biggest career was a teacher. I had my master's. I still have my master's in education, but I went back to teaching and I was just like, this is not my passion anymore. I went back for a little bit a few years ago and I was like, nope, this isn't it. It's working with widows. And, I've always been an entrepreneur, a self-starter, a speaker, a writer, like all of these things. Like I went to North Carolina once. Here's a little known fact, probably none of you know. And I spoke at this thing called the Unstoppable Women's Conference. And I talked about peace through the something. It was about having peace. And I got started with that. And little side note, podcasting did not begin with this podcast. My podcasting began when Luke was sick. I went to a writer's conference. I learned how to start a podcast. I researched everything on YouTube, taught myself. And this podcast is still out there. It's called The Peace Cast. And I started interviewing people who found peace in Jesus after going through hard things. And then it kind of turned into an update about what's going on with Luke. They're very sad. I have actually posted one on here. I cry because I do one a couple weeks after he dies. And it is so sad. Like it's incredibly sad. But I did put it on this podcast once to show people how far God has taken me. Anyway, so my podcasting started back then. And then I also started a podcast called Widow Goals. And I did about, I think it's 5 or 10 episodes. Maybe it's 10. It's still out there. You can find it. It was just little short episodes on my own. And I really just liked that I was helping people. Then in the meantime, I had met Mark Massaro, who is our past co-host, on a Facebook group called Widowed. Why can't I remember it all this? Widow. My widow brain. Widow with children. There it is. And we became friends and decided, look at this. There's so much sadness. Like the Facebook page was so sad, and it's what I'm trying so hard to not let the Widow Too Soon community page become. And we were like, they need Jesus. Like they're turning to alcohol and sex and all the wrong things. We need to point them to Jesus. And so I was like, well, I'm already doing this podcast, but would you do a podcast with me? Because I couldn't find any podcasts out there, especially Christian podcasts, that had a widow and a widower. And so we decided to start, and our first podcast, Meet Your Host, Mark Massaro, it launched on May 1st, 2021. And then the next week was Meet Your Host, Michelle Bader, launched the next week. And I was about 10 months out, 11 months out from Luke dying. He was probably like 7 months out from Lacey dying. And we got started. We were baby widows. I look at it now, I'm like, whoa, God used us when we're baby widows. So don't let the fact that you're a baby widow stop you from God being able to use you, because he can use you in huge, massive ways. So we started this podcast, like not really knowing what was going to happen. We're all excited. Like a few of our friends listened. And there's been lots of ups and downs and changes, and I won't get into all of that, but a lot of you know, because if you are a new listener, you may not know that Mark ended up having a stroke last April and is no longer doing the podcast. And so there's been so many changes, but I'm thankful for where I am today and where God has brought this podcast, and that you, the listener, are listening. And I would be safe to say that a lot of you listening were not even widowed when I started this, because it's usually like a lot of new widows who listen. And so that was kind of where the ministry started. That's when I was like, okay. And I started being known as the widow person in my community. People started sending me widows. And then I decided to start a nonprofit called Widow Goals. You may have heard of it. I talk about it. Widowgoals.org is the website. And in the beginning, I wasn't sure what it was going to be. I just knew I wanted a nonprofit. So I got the nonprofit formed and just launched. I had some ideas, but not sure. And that too has changed over the years. So we've been going about 2.5 years. And the very first thing we did was Mother's Day, because it launched in March. And then in Mother's Day, I bought a whole bunch of gifts, and I knew, I think 7 or 8 widows, which is so crazy now because I've known so many more, like 7 or 8 widows in the area. And Haley, my daughter, and I drove around to all of their houses and left a gift for them. And that's the very first thing that Widow Goals ever did. And it was like so cool. I was like, I love this. I love being able to help new widows. Then we started having a couple events. I think we called it Surviving and Thriving in Grief. We had a couple widows speak, plus other people who'd gone through other types of grief. I started doing different speaking events, just volunteering at churches to speak, and it started to grow. And then we decided to launch, the next Mother's Day, we did a Mother's Day tea, which was really fun, very small. And then from there, we decided to do monthly events. And now it's quite large. We normally have between 10 and 15 every month. We have 30 some on our group. I wouldn't say quite large, but it's grown a lot. And those are good friends. In fact, we had an event. We had our Friendsgiving last Monday night. It was absolutely beautiful. And thank you, Becky, for hosting. And it was just such a great time of coming together. We said what we were thankful for. Even one woman said she was thankful for the podcast. That meant a lot to me. And a lot of people said they're thankful for this group. So a group of people who gets it. And what else do? We give scholarships for grief recovery. So if you're someone who's like, I really want that help that you talked about, you can apply for a scholarship, and we have funds available for that. We've also done 2 retreats, which have been amazing. And there may be more retreats in the future. And then something that I'm really excited about is the launch of Widow Goals internationally. Actually, I was going to say nationwide, but I know of someone in Canada who wants to start one. So after this year's retreat, and so I'm kind of doing like 2 different stories. Right now I'm talking about the purpose from my pain. And then I'm going to go back and tell you the story of Joel and I. So it's really twofold. So in high school, my best friends and I don't know why we'd always say it's threefold, it's twofold. I have all these like high school sayings that come back in my mind sometimes. Like somebody went to the clip and curl. Like whenever somebody would come into high school and they had their hair like totally curled, we would quote, I think it was from Fried Green Tomatoes. And when somebody had like curly hair, they were like, somebody just went to the clip and curl. Anyways, if any of my high school friends heard this, they would think it's funny. But anyways, it's really two parts, this story. So what's happening with the nonprofit currently? After this year's retreat, I had a lot of wonderful volunteers, widows, who are some of them, in fact, baby widows themselves. Maybe not widows, like brand new, but they're, year and a half out and they want to help. And so we have now launched Widow Goals groups in 6 locations. I'm happy to say we have Karen Kindle in the Tri-Cities. We've got Cheryl Smith in Mid-Missouri, Kim Lentz in Des Moines, Iowa, Linnea Webb in Glendive, Montana. We've got Susan, all of a sudden, Susan, I just forgot your last name for a second. We've got Susan, I know your last name, Susan Schultz in Sacramento area. We've got Rebecca Busa, new last name because she just got married and I don't know what it is, in El Paso, Texas. Am I forgetting anybody? I think that's everybody. And then, of course, myself and Stacy Campbell Waits run the one in Vancouver, Washington. So that's been exciting in itself, is watching it grow. So the first month, I helped them set up their groups, find their widows, and launch their groups. And then we got on a Zoom call and they got to tell us all about it. And it was one of the most rewarding things I've ever seen in my life, to see these widows who are now taking this on and spreading it. And it's just amazing and beautiful. And here's the exciting part for you, listener. If you are somebody who says, I want to bring widow goals to my area, like, and I'm sorry, men, this is only for women at this point. Unless there's a man, I'm not opposed to this. If there is a man who wants to lead a men's widow goals, that's fine. But I'm just trying to keep it kind of separate. Gotta keep them separated. 90s, keep them separate. Okay. Singing on my own doesn't work. Anyways, if you are someone who I want a group in my area, people say this to me all the time. I'm like, you could start one. That's what I did. There was literally nothing in my area. Nothing. I actually I emailed every church. I tried to find something, which is crazy because God calls us to take care of the widows and the fatherless. That was me and my kids, and I couldn't find anything. And so I started this, went to churches. I only had a couple churches respond. Anyways, I'm backing it up too much. So if you're saying, I want something in my area, but I don't know how to do it, I would like you to think about it. It's not out yet. I don't have the application out yet. Just put it in your mind, file it away. I'm going to have applications for people who say, I am a widow who wants to give back. I don't care if it's 3 months, 3 years, 30 years. If you are someone who wants to give back and wants to get widows together, you can do this. You don't have to have a house to do it in. In fact, we recommend public spaces in the beginning before you know everybody. And I show you how to create the group. I actually create the groups for you. I show you how to find the people. I have meetings with the groups. I'm sorry, no money in this. If you want money, it's not in this. It's not in podcasting. It's not in this. This is because we want to help people, right? And I show you how to do it step by step and get your group started, show you what to do, show you how to find your widows, and you too can lead a widows goals group. And so it's exciting time right now because we are launching everywhere. And it's so much is happening. So that's a little bit about that side of the story, about how God is using purpose from my pain. No, that's it. And I'm currently writing the book and just doing a bunch of stuff. And then, as you guys know, leading the widows groups. And by the way, side note, if you'd like to be in our small community, Widowed Too Soon podcast community, I know it's confusing. It's only one word difference. Please go to the link below. You have to find me on Facebook, send a message. It's kind of like you got to do an obstacle course. So I know that you actually want to be there. You find me, you send me a message, I send you a link. It may or may not work because the links have been weird, but eventually we get you in the group. And there's only 61 of us, and they're all podcast listeners and good people. And I mean, not that other people aren't good. You know what I'm saying? It's just safe people. I know they're safe. There's no scammers in that group. So anyways, that's a little bit about the ministry side. And, there was a time a few months ago, as you guys probably know, that I was going to quit the podcast because Mark was unable to continue. And I was like, okay, I'm married again. Maybe I don't qualify for this anymore. And then that's when I got I told you guys last time, the vision of megaphones and handing them to people, and like really decided to go heavy interview on this podcast now. And here we are. And I love, love, love my time with widows, whether it's podcasting, posting in the group, TikToks, grief recovery. I love it all. So now let's get into the fun story. Let me tell you a little story, kids. Okay. Y'all ready for a bedtime story? Once upon a time. No, actually. So, and if you already know this, you don't have to listen, but it's always fun to share. Okay. So, I would say a few months after Luke died, 4-ish months, I decided I was kind of like, I don't know, maybe ready to start not dating, but start talking to guys. And it's a wild, wild west out there, let me tell you. It was a wild, wild west. But thank the Lord for Joel. So, how it happened with Joel was not a dating app. It was not like a traditional way, but it was God's way. And I always say, let God write your love story. So I was on Facebook, and the section that says someone you may know. Joel came across it. Didn't even have his last name on it, but I kind of recognized him. And so I just clicked friend. He accepted it. Nothing happened. And I was like, let me send him a little message. So I don't remember what I said, and too bad I don't have my old account. As you guys know, my Facebook account got shut down, which is super sad with all my memories with Luke. But that's another story. So I said something like, hey, remember me? So let me set the stage. Joel and I went to college together at Laterno University in Longview, Texas. I went there for elementary education and soccer. He was there for aviation. And we were friends. He was like that cute guy from Brazil with a thick accent. Like he just moved from Brazil like the year before. He had a really thick Brazilian accent at that point. And I remember thinking he was cute, but nothing more. He never approached me. And then I did have a boyfriend for 3 years of college. So, that might be part of it. And that's a whole other story that I've never told on the podcast. I don't know if I will, but it was not great. That was right before I met Luke again. So got this theme of what God's done in my life of meeting people again from my past. So anyways, Joel and I it was more like mutual friends. In fact, Deborah, my best friend, was like, I think I hung out with him more than you. And I'm like, yeah. She recently found a picture of them from college. I was like, yeah, I think it was you and him more than me. We went wakeboarding together, but he did come to California to visit me, which I find interesting that I barely remembered him, but he came all the way to California to hang out with me and Deborah when we moved out to Biola. So, which is crazy. I now have that picture. Anyways, so let's fast forward to a couple years ago, 3 years ago to be exact, 2021. And it was July of 2021. We started talking. So I sent a message. Then he said, hey, let's FaceTime. I was like, okay. So he FaceTimed me, and I don't remember how long our conversation was, but I think it was pretty long. And we just caught up on life. He told me about his life. He had been through a divorce and what his life was like. I talked about, that I was widowed, and we talked about our kids and where are we now, blah, blah, blah. And then we started kind of being flirty in these Facebook messages. I remember one of the first ones, I think it was August. So a month after we've been talking. I remember being in Sun River with my family and being at the store, and there was these socks that said, still got it, or something like that. So I sent a picture of that to him, and he's like, well, you still got it. Like we would always joke about, do I still have it? And he'd be like, yeah, you still have it. Because, okay, let's be real, widows and widowers. If you've been married for 20 some years or whatever, when you go back into the dating world, you wonder, do I still got it? And apparently he thought I did, and I thought he did. And it started to be more and more, he'd send me little video messages, and I was like, oh, this guy is cute. I like the pilot. Can I speak? That's what I would refer to him as, like to my friends and to everybody, like the pilot. Everybody told me they liked the pilot for me. But we were just friends and we talked almost every day. We did some video messages, some Marco Polo messages, we text a lot. He would call me a lot. Like I would think it was like every couple days he'd call me. So I kind of got to know his life and I really liked him. And he acted like he liked me. He was flirty, all the things. But I also loved about him is he never went inappropriate. If you're in the dating world, you know that could happen real fast these days. And he never ever. He was very much a gentleman, strong Christian, like just really was an encouragement to me. And I was like, I like this guy. So one day, October 19th, 2021 to be exact, he was actually flying back from Brazil. He had just gone to visit. And I said to him, okay, Joel, we were on a FaceTime. So do you like me or not? I'd actually been trying to get the courage up all weekend to ask him. I was in Phoenix with Stacy and she kept saying, just ask him. I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do it. So I finally asked him and he goes, well, I never thought about that before because I live in Louisiana and you live in Washington. And I was like, I don't care. He's like, well, I can't see how it's going to work. And he tells the story that he didn't ever want to hurt me and he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to make it work. And so he didn't want to break my heart. And so he never like went for it. Thankfully, I was able to ask him. And I've always been somebody that if I want something, I go get it. And I wanted Joel. So he said, well, I never thought about, but okay, why not? Let's try this. Why not? So I'm like, okay, so what does this mean? Like, well, we're not like dating because we haven't seen each other in over 20 years, but how about we don't talk to anybody else? Like, we're not going on dates with other people. I'm like, okay, good deal. So then October 19th, 2021 is the first day we talked, and we have still never missed a day. I'm proud to say that. Hopefully it stays that way. Never missed a day of talking. And we just started this wonderful relationship. It was very flirty and sweet. And we talk about deep things. We talk about for hours. I remember staying up all night talking to him on the phone. And I just was like, man, I really like this guy. He is high quality. He loves Jesus. He's a pilot. He's amazing. He's all these things that I loved. He's so patient and kind. And he's like the most soft spoken man I've ever met. And not in a bad way, but just in a really kind way. Like he's probably the kindest, overall kindest, most generous person I've ever met. And then he decided he had family probably like 45 minutes from where I live. So he decided. So we started talking October and then November of 21. So we're coming up on 3 years now. He decided to come see me. He had family in Boring, Oregon. Yeah, it's really called Boring. I'm not lying. Boring, Oregon. And he wanted to go stay with them and then see me. So he came out with his son, and I don't know why we decided the first time to see each other, we would have our kids with us. So I'm sitting at a table at Applebee's waiting for him and his son to show up with my 3 kids. And he's late because he said it took forever to get the car, all these things. And Peyton, who was, I think, 13 or 14 at the time, said, maybe he's not going to show up. You know, guys do that sometimes. And I was like, no, he's coming. He didn't fly. He's not telling me he's flying across the country and not coming. Anyways, he came. We actually have a sweet, sweet video. I'm going to link it just for fun. A video, it's on TikTok, of when we saw each other for the very first time. And he walks into Applebee's, he gives me a hug, and the whole conversation's a little awkward because we have our kids. We haven't seen each other in 20 years. He's not acting like he likes me, which I asked him about. He's like, well, I want to play it cool in front of your kids. Like, I didn't want to be like totally into you in front of them. Anyways, it was awkward, but then we dropped all the kids off and him and I went on our own date. We were in the parking lot of Beaches when he said, I love you. And I was like, wait, like the love of Christ? Because he had said that to me once. Like a sister in Christ? He's like, no, like romantically. I'm like, I love you too. And that began an even deeper relationship. And we started a long distance relationship where we would see each other about once a month. We'd fly, he'd come here, I'd go there, we'd meet somewhere, whatever we could do to see each other. And we'd always leave with the next trip planned. We never left without it. I had to know my next countdown of when I'd see him again. And things, there was a lot of stuff in between we had to work out, from kids to where we going to live, like just all of this as it got more serious. There was definitely grief as I dated. I would miss Luke, but love Joel. So if you're in the dating phase, no, that's totally normal. And um, it took a lot of prayer, counseling, dedication to figure out how we would combine our lives. Now, let me just tell you, dating in your 40s is a lot harder than dating in your 20s. You got a lot more life, a lot more baggage, a lot more things to think about. And it was a long, long, long process. Well, to me, it seemed long. Until we were ready to get engaged. I remember the day he told me, I'm ready to move forward with you. Some other things had to like pan out for him to feel that way. And he was ready to start looking at moving to Washington, because I was like, I'm not moving to Louisiana. So, it was too hard. I had just moved in my new house. I didn't want to do that to my kids. And it made sense at that point. He had no one living with him, that it made sense for him to move this way. So anyways, October 1st of 22, we went to Laterno, where we went to college, and my best friend came. We went for a homecoming weekend. It was an amazing time. And the three of us had just gone to pizza. And then they were like, let's go to astronomy night, like where you look at telescopes and look at stars. I'm like, that's weird. Like, we're not really into that, but okay. And so we go, but it's at the soccer field. So that's how they had their little plan, because I used to play soccer in college. I remember that's where Joel and I met. I have got to link this video too, because it's probably the cutest video ever. So we were walking in the soccer fields, and Joel was like, hey, is this where you used to play? And I turned around and he's on one knee. Okay, I was shocked because I knew we were getting engaged, but he told me the ring wasn't ready. And so I didn't think it was happening. And he asked me to marry him. And I was like, are you serious? Are you serious? I'm jumping up and down. And anyways, we got engaged. And it was like such a surreal moment. And it's all filmed because I told him I wanted it. If you ever propose to me, I really want it on film, like I'm 80 years old. I just want it recorded. And it was so special that Deborah was there and they were in on this whole plan together. It was absolutely amazing. Now, I want to tell you, so you remember the ring story with Luke, okay? That's really important from part 1. So, when Joel and I were talking about getting married, somehow it came up to he wanted to take the diamonds from my original wedding band, not my engagement part of it. Like, that's all separate. And, the part that Luke gave me at the end, that's still there. That's still totally intact. That's there for Haley. But my wedding band, that he wanted to melt it down, and he wanted to put diamonds from both men who love me. So he melted it down. Well, not he had it done actually at Eric Runyon Jewelers. The same person, the same lady, Tanny, helped Luke, also helped Joel, which I think is very, very special too. So she got to help both the men in my life with rings for me. And so she helped, and she helped us design this ring. So I always look at it, and I have like the rings. If you're looking right here, those diamonds are from Luke, and this one's from Joel. And so it's super special, and also like super irreplaceable. And I loved that he did that. That's just an idea for the future. If that's something you would like, I think it's super special. Like, I love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. So anyways, that's our engagement story. And then January of 23, he was able to move to our area. So that was some advice I got from another widow. Like, before you marry someone that you haven't lived around, live around them for a little bit before you're like in the same house. So he lived like a mile away from us. And so he'd be here all the time, but yet he wasn't here, wasn't staying here yet. And so that was a great way for the kids to slowly get adjusted to him. And then March 18th, 2023. If you haven't seen this video, please go to my Facebook. It's the top, like Michelle Bader Ebersole. It's on public. Anybody can see it. It's our wedding video. We got married. It was the most beautiful day. It was 70 degrees in March in Washington, which is unheard of. And we got married in a hangar, but not like a dingy hangar. It looks like a barn with the white lights. It was so beautiful. and we had like close to 300 people, and it was beautiful. And, we actually addressed what we called the elephant in the room. Like after I walked down the aisle, I took the microphone and I read a poem, not a poem. I read something about having space for whatever you're feeling today, because the death of a dad and the death of a family had to happen in order for this day. And so if you're sad, that's okay. We reserve space for whatever you're feeling today. And anyways, beautiful wedding. Haley sang. I mean, it was just gorgeous, like everything I ever dreamed of and more. And then the coolest part is when it was time to go, we also hired a line dance instructor. No, I want to say I did, because Joel didn't, I don't think, even participate in this part. We had a line dance instructor, and it was a blast. Even like we had like 50 people out there dancing. Even like my kids' friends were out there dancing, and it was an amazing time. And then the coolest part, we're leaving and they make a tunnel and they throw paper airplanes at us or above us. And then we run out to the plane. We had a plane out in the front, and Joel flies us away. And it was beautiful and amazing. And everything I literally ever dreamed of, God gave me. Like, some people don't want the big wedding the second time, but I did. I knew from the day that I wanted to get married again that I wanted to celebrate. I wanted to celebrate that God had done so much in my life and brought me another amazing person. And so, yeah, that was my wedding. That was March 18th, 2023. And so it's been about a year and 7 months since we got married. And it has been, I would say 99% of the time, absolutely amazing. Of course, there's adjustments, especially with kids, but it has been like the most redeeming time in my whole life. Now, I want this to be clear. Joel is not the reason for my joy. Jesus is the reason for my joy. God had healed me before Joel. Joel just adds to my joy. He's like a gift from God, straight from God, like a good piece of chocolate cake, like with a cherry on top. Like, he's so good. I'm so thankful for him. But actually, like, I like cheesecake better. Maybe he's cheesecake. I don't know. He's like, ooh, hot fudge sundae. Like, he's all of the best desserts there are. Like, he really is. And I'm so thankful. And this kind of like ties the two stories together. He supports what I do. He supports Widow Goals, the ministry, Widow Too Soon, the podcast, which also, side note, I forgot to say this is a very important thing. Widow Too Soon we are under the umbrella of Widow Goals. So, meaning, if we need some new recording equipment, we need a new microphone, we need this, which is not very often, but little things like that, Widow Goals, the nonprofit, pays for it. So that's how we're tied with that. So Widow Goals helps to provide these podcasts. And Joel is by my side. He's actually the one who said that I should make a nonprofit. It was his idea. And he's completely been backing it. He's gone to meetings with me. He has really just supported everything. The retreat that was local, he was helping to move things in. He's helped to, drive us to the airport. Like, he will do whatever it takes. And then a huge part of that is he provides for me financially so that I can do this, because I don't get paid for nonprofit. It's all volunteer work. So he has sacrificed he works usually like 3 jobs. Like, he works for my brother. He has one client he flies for. He also fixes planes. That's 3 right there. He's always working on the weekends. He's taking his other jobs, and he's always working so that we can have a good life and that I can do my ministry and not stress. I make a little money here and there with being a grief recovery specialist. I'm working on getting a book published so I can make money there. But it's mostly like this, where we're at now today with the ministry would not be happening if God had not brought Joel into my life. And so it's super exciting to see that it's all part of his plan, like all of it. Like, here's something that's kind of hard to say, but it's true. But it's like, wow, a year ago when we did our first retreat, God spoke to me so clearly. It was during worship time. And it was like he was saying, when I say spoke to me, I don't mean in an audible voice, just thoughts that I have, and I know it's him. He's like, okay, look at all of these people worshiping. I'm looking at these widows we've just had this wonderful weekend with. And he's like, and I know I'm impacting their lives. And now I feel it on a bigger scale now, because I see this page that's 6,000 people, and, all the stuff, all the people from the 96 countries that write to me and tell me that the podcast is helping them. And I see it bigger now. And he's like, look at all these people. And I was brought back. Wow, I'm getting like emotional thinking about it. I was brought back to Luke's deathbed again. And he said, if Luke hadn't died, none of these people would be here. Whoa. If Luke hadn't died, none of you would be listening to the podcast. If Luke hadn't died, the podcast page wouldn't be here. I mean, it's crazy. Like, I would have never planned this. It is not what I wanted, but it is one of the ultimate stories of God redeeming. He's a redeemer. A redeemer lives. Redeemer. Like, that's really, it's just like coming on me right now. Holy Spirit, like, that's the word I'm hearing. Redeemer. Like, God is a redeemer. He wants to redeem your story. This episode isn't all about, oh, look what God did for me. Like, look at me, look at me. I want it to be an inspiration and hope for you that God can redeem your story. It doesn't have to be through another man. It doesn't have to be through a ministry. It's going to be whatever way he chooses to redeem your life. And he can bring back your joy. And he can redeem every single thing you have been through. God does not waste a thing. There's no waste. God has purpose for your pain, just like he said purpose for my pain. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what it's going to look like. But I promise you, if you let him, he will redeem you. He will restore you. He will bring back your joy. And there will be purpose from your pain. It's not all in vain. Like, you had to go through this. I don't know why. And I'm so sorry you have. We'll probably never know until heaven, like, why we had to go through this. But I know that I know that I know that it's not wasted. Even right now, as a baby widow, there's probably people watching you and seeing how you're giving God the glory and seeing the way that you are responding, and your life is speaking to them without you saying a word. And so I just want to encourage you that, like, I'm not special. I mean, we're all special, but you know what I mean? Like, not any more special than you. You know, we all have the ways that God is going to use us and redeem us in. But we have to, that's another thing. We have to let him. We cannot stay in that victim mentality. And like, I used to be there. Okay. 3 years ago, Thanksgiving, I remember, no, 4 years ago. So I was 6 months out watching all these families at Great Wolf Lodge and just crying and like, poor me, poor me, poor me. And then I was like, no, like, yeah, what's happens to me? It's horrible. I hate it. I hate it for my kids. I hate it. But I will not let it define me. I will not let it put me in a box. I will not stay sad forever. Here's one of the most important things. What we feel, God can heal. Let me say it again. What we feel, God can heal. Let yourself, like, that's the biggest secret to grief. It's not a secret, but like, you got to feel it. God can't heal it if we don't feel it. Like, he can't force us to do things. We have free will. And so you have to do the process of feeling it so that he can heal you. Like, I just have a feeling like there's so many of you that God has, I mean, everybody who wants it, God has huge, huge, huge plans for your life. Okay. I know it might feel like right now in this very moment in your dark days. No, I don't see it. And that's okay. You don't have to see it. Like, he didn't promise that we'd always be able to see it. He promised he'd always be there. I see it as like, you're like in a dark tunnel and you're holding his hand and that's all you got. Like, you can't really hear, you can't see. It's just chaos. But he's like, just hold on to me. Just hold on to me and I'll get you through. I'm not going to tell you how long it's going to take. I'm not going to tell you how hard it's going to be, but I promise I will be with you. When you go through deep waters, Isaiah 43:2, when you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through the fire, I will be with you. I might not be exact version, but the point is Jesus will never stop holding your hand. And I don't really do this very often at all, but I'm just feeling it. If you don't know Jesus as your personal savior, I highly recommend it. I mean, more than highly recommend it. It's a good thing to do. Jesus is the only way that I am where I am today. Yes, grief recovery was awesome. Grief classes, grief books, my friends, family, but Jesus is the one who did the healing in my heart. There's no other way to explain it. There's no other way. And that's why I feel like so many people are stuck, is because they got the tools, but they don't have the carpenter. Like they don't have the guy who can use the tools on their heart. And so Jesus is the only one. And I just want to like invite you that if you don't know him today, just ask him, Jesus, please forgive me. Come into my life today. I want you to be Lord and Savior of my life. I want the peace that passes all understanding. I want to see my loved one. I want you to use me today. I want you to use me. I want to be a vessel, God. I want to be a vessel. I didn't want to go through this. But Jesus, pour into me so I can pour into others. Heal me so I can help others. I'm seeing a picture. Okay, so that's a whole other episode about the different ways you hear from God, but it's like I'm seeing a picture of Jesus with like all these children and he's just gathering them and you're one of those children. And he wants to be with you so bad. You know how much you love your kids? Like it's that times a million. And he just wants to be with you. He just wants to hold you. He just says, let me hold you, my child. I want to heal your heart. I'm so sorry that your heart is broken. I see every tear. I collect them in a bottle. And I want to heal you. So I'm asking you today, let Jesus heal you. If you've never done that before, do it right now. He wants to heal you. And reach out to me if you have any questions about like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't really know, or what steps do I take from here? Reach out to me. I want to help you. There's so many people in our Widow Too Soon community that want to help you. I'm just feeling like a big burden to say this today. Like, without Jesus, what is the point of life? It really isn't. There really isn't. I feel like the point of my life is to affect eternity and to show Jesus' love and give you hope for a future. God knows your future. And he wants to be close to you. There's no other way. Like he's close to the brokenhearted and crushed in spirit. And that's most likely you. That was me in the beginning of this journey. So brokenhearted, so crushed in spirit. But the peace that passes all understanding is really something I can't explain. But I'm feeling it right now. Thank you, Jesus. I'm feeling it right now. It's like this peace that just comes over you. And it's so amazing. And he wants to do that for you. I promise he wants to do that for you. He knows you by name. He has seen every tear you've cried, every time you stayed up in the middle of the night crying uncontrollably, every tear that no one sees. He sees them all. The times you cry in the shower because you don't want your kids to see, the times that you do it in the middle of the night because you don't want anyone to know, all of it. He knows it, and he wants to heal you and be with you and help you. And whew, this was a big episode. Wasn't planning on this direction, but I go where he leads. So anyways, that is Michelle Bader Ebersole's part 2 of my life. I mean, there's so much more, so much more. And there's so much more for you too. Let me just pray. Let me pray for you. Jesus, I thank you for every single listener who is listening right now. And whenever it is, God, you have the perfect timing. They are not here by accident, God. I just pray that if they don't know you, they will come to know you. If they already do know you, they will know you in a deeper way as you comfort their hearts. I just pray that today you will start revealing your purpose in their lives. You will guide them where you want them to go, because they too can affect other lives. And I just thank you for the way that you've blessed my ministry. Thank you for Mark and all he put into this ministry. Please bless him and heal him with a stroke. And I just thank you for your love and just all you've done for us. And I just thank you for every listener. And I just pray for every broken heart. Amen. If you like this podcast, I'm trying to say this while crying, give it a little bing, 5 stars, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, rate and review. That would be awesome. If you'd like to be a guest, please fill out the form. I love having guests. It's like one of my most favorite things in the whole world. I don't get so emotional. Please join our small group. You find me is a link below, or just look for Michelle Bader Ebersole. You can't miss me. It says on my profile now, Luke's widow, Joel's wife. Like, you can't miss me. And send me a message and I will add you to that small group. Please join the big one too if you want to encourage other people. But if it's too much for you, because it's 6,000 people and it's a lot of people's stories, Not going to hurt my feelings if you want to leave. I had to leave groups like that. So, anyways, thank you all for being here. I love you all. And I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Widowed Too Soon with Michelle Bader Ebersole. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, rate and review. And we'd also love for you to join our Widowed Too Soon community on Facebook. See you next time.